Hey everyone, it's Wade Franson. I am back in the studio with a sneak peek of episode 159, airing on July 15th, with Gerry Tostowaryk, who hails from Canada. And while this show is airing near Independence Day, we're going to have a Canadian on the show. And this man is unique. We've had him on the show in our dim antiquity before we started really keeping track of exactly who was on. We counted episodes, but not who. So he was in one of the first 30 episodes, I believe. But we have him back because he's now in semi-retirement. He's just completed his first novel. His passion, however, is what he's doing with that time, which is studying into philosophy and ethics. After having spent most of his life in real estate up in Canada, 9 years teaching ethics as one of the premier ethics instructors in the field of real estate in Canada. Welcome to the studio, Gerry.
Wade, thank you very much. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Well, so am I, because the topic is near and dear to my heart, the independent investigation of reality. And does philosophy have a role? If so, what, how? And so the first question I have for you, and I'm going to give you, 30 to 45 seconds to answer this age-old question. How does one independently investigate reality, and what role does philosophy play?
Oh, such a great question, Wade. And in 2,000 years, we haven't been able to answer that question, but I get 30 seconds, so I should nail it. And that is really the $68,000 question, because really there's three main groups, I guess you'd call them, that investigate reality. There's science, there's philosophy, and there's theology or religious investigation into reality. And they bump up against each other a lot, but often we find some of them in every field and all three of them coming in with preconceived notions, sometimes preconceived beliefs, which really, as human beings, is I guess only natural, but it affects. When we're investigating anything, we should be going in with an open mind, looking for the facts. But quite often we don't. And so that really affects, and has for 2,000 years, has affected actually more than 2,000, as we'll get into in the show, has really affected that investigation into reality. And I guess has led to no conclusions yet.
Well, we'll try to draw some, minimal conclusions, or at least road signs. One of the ways in which we're going to get there is diving a little bit into your own experience, because I can imagine, having spent so much time in real estate, large transactions, people's life savings involved, and the proclivity perhaps to try to maybe not disclose certain things about the real estate that's being sold, despite reams of forced disclosures, right? There's a lot of effort made to provide transparent information and make those transactions ethical and equitable. But we all know that the reason for regulations is to try to force that behavior, which maybe doesn't come natural, because the natural proclivity is more self-preservation, selfishness, and thus these biases take deep root and deep hold. So has your work in that field impacted why and how you perhaps are really spending your semi-retirement in this field?
That's such a great question, Wade. And I hadn't given it deep thought until about, 10 seconds ago. I had thought about it somewhat, and it certainly has affected me in this regard. And in fact, it was a central question for about the 10 or 15 years when I was, actually up over in its entirety, 20 some years when I was instructing the industry, but the last 10 to 12 years where I was heavily involved in ethics, where there was give and take from less ethical and more ethical standpoints. And so that's a long way of saying, it's played a big role, and it's really brought out a lot of thought-provoking in my mind. Not if I said that right. It's provoked a lot of thought in my mind in regards to ethics and philosophy and reality and what's the good. So long way of saying it's played a big part.
Well, and we will dive into it both theoretically and also from a rubber meets the road perspective, as you can already tell from this sneak peek. So you're not going to want to miss episode 159 of Creating an Image of God with Gerry Tostowaryk, which will be airing on July 15th at 8 p.m. Central. I would invite, encourage, with all that is available to me, ethically insist that you show up for that show. We'll see you then.